Don't let your kids what's it?
James was overjoyed. Thomas wasn't happy at all. But I wanted to collect the fireworks, Thomas pouted. Sir Topham Hatt chose me because I'm as red as a rocket and twice as grand. Bother James, he grouched, and he biffed the troublesome trucks crossly around the yard. Thomas shunted the last truck crossly into place. The troublesome trucks were glad that job was finished. Oh, he was imagining all the sparkles, flashes, and shooting stars when suddenly there was a loud noise. And James ground to a halt. Thomas found James broken down on the track. "Hello, busted boiler," teased Thomas.
It's so distracting you can replace it with this.
Unfunny in-joke.
"You don't look very useful now." James was upset. But when Thomas got behind James, he couldn't see ahead. "You will have to look out for me," said Thomas. James was cross. "You said I wasn't useful," he pouted. "But if the fireworks don't get to Knapford Station," puffed Thomas, "the display will be canceled." James didn't want the children to be sad, so he agreed to look out for Thomas, and they set off together. "Look," James puffed proudly, "Sir Topham Hatt gave me some smart new freight cars. They're much nicer than yours." "It's not fair," moaned Thomas. "I want new cars too." "I've got new freight cars too," puffed Thomas. "They're even nicer than James's," puffed Bill and Ben. "Your freight cars may be nice and new now," huffed James, "but you'll never keep yours as clean as mine." "Yes, I will," chuffed Thomas. "I'll have the cleanest freight cars on the island." The next day, Thomas puffed into the quarry. James's cars were already loaded. "I've got my stone already," boasted James, "and not a spot of quarry dust on me." "I can do that too," pouted Thomas. So Thomas backed under the hopper. But just as the stone was released, Thomas's freight cars chuckled. Then they rolled a bit more. "Bother," huffed Thomas. "Ha!" puffed James. "Your cars don't look so new now." Thomas was cross. Later, when Thomas arrived at the washdown, there was James. "See? I have got the cleanest freight cars. You'll be here for hours getting yours cleaned," laughed James. Thomas was very cross. Just then, James puffed into the docks. "Look at your freight cars," boasted James. "Filthy again, not like mine." James tried to pull away, but his troublesome trucks didn't want to be clean anymore. Hold back, they chuckled. Just then, Cranky's cable snapped. He dropped a large crate of melons.
You shitting me?
"James," tooted Thomas, "I think freight cars like to be useful rather than clean." "I am to collect a car of flour to make cakes and bread for the children's Harvest Festival supper," tooted James. "I wish Sir Topham Hatt had given me that job," chuffed Thomas. "It would be so much more fun than shunting troublesome trucks." James was feeling very pleased with himself. "First, I have to take on water," he whistled grandly. "Please shunt the flour car over for me, Thomas." Thomas didn't want to shunt any more cars. It meant his job would go on for even longer. "Bossy boiler," he puffed. He biffed the car very hard, and the door came loose. But Thomas didn't see. An idea had flown into his funnel. "I'll hide James's car. Then Bossy Boiler will have to find me. Thomas thought hide and seek was a grand idea.
You fucking idiot!
James came back from the water tower. He saw Thomas in the distance. And James saw that falling from the car was a trail of flour. "Stop, Thomas!" whistled James. "Flour is falling out of your car!" But Thomas was too far away to hear. James chased after Thomas. Thomas heard him coming. "How does he know where I am?" thought Thomas. "Thomas! The flour!" whistled James. Thomas found another good place to hide. "James will never find me here," he hooted happily. But then he heard James's whistle again. "Bust my buffers," chuffed Thomas. "He's found me again." So Thomas puffed off. "James will never find me here," he tooted cheerily. But just then, he saw James come around the bend. "Thomas!" puffed James. He was very cross. "You've left a trail of flour all over the wharf." "Cinders and ashes!" cried Thomas. "I must have biffed the car so hard that the door came loose." Thomas didn't feel cheery anymore. "If I've lost all the flour, there'll be no cakes and bread for the children's harvest festival supper," he wished sadly. But when he puffed into the yards, there was James. James had finished all his jobs first. "Cinders and ashes!" cried Thomas. "Look, Thomas," huffed James proudly. "Don't these flags look wonderful on me?" Thomas was upset. "But you pulled the team cars last year," he huffed. "And I'm pulling them again this year," snorted James, "because I finished all my jobs and I got to the yard first." Thomas was very unhappy. "It's not fair," he wished. He wanted to find a way to make James change his mind. "I've got an idea," tooted Thomas. "Why don't you take Sir Topham Hatt to the game? He will have the trophy. That's the best job. Then I can take the Sodor team cars for you." But James didn't want to take Sir Topham Hatt or the trophy. He thought wearing the team colors was much more exciting. Thomas tried to think of another way to make James change his mind. "Wait, James," he cried. "Look at your reflection." "Green flags spoil your bright red paint," puffed Thomas. But James didn't think so. He thought he looked splendid. And he puffed off smiling. Thomas's idea to take the team hadn't worked. He was pleased that James hadn't yet arrived. "Quick, sir! You must change the points." So the signalman pulled a big lever. Then Thomas watched James fly into the siding. The siding hadn't been used for a long time. It was very overgrown. Thomas heard scratching and scraping sounds. When Thomas saw what had happened, he could not believe his eyes. "Cinders and ashes!" cried Thomas. All the green and white flags had been ripped from James's funnel and cab. "The Sodor team colors are ruined!" cried James. Thomas felt terrible.
Thomas is a dumbass. Da-da-da-da-da-da. Thomas is a dumbass. Da-da-da-da-da. Seriously, he's a fucking idiot.